I can still remember the day I learned that Middle-earth was a real place, a physical, tangible location that you could actually visit. I was 9 years old and my parents' best friends had just gone over to New Zealand to hunt down filming locations, long before there were any guidebooks or even any tour guides. Alison handed me a shirt from a very primitive Weta Workshop gift shop that I still have to this day, and she whispered in my ear, "I've been there, Lockie. Middle-earth is real." Even in 2002, I was immersed in the world of Tolkien, voraciously poring over the illustrated editions I had received for Christmas the year before and watching the extended editions almost constantly, and as soon as I heard those words, I dreamed of visiting New Zealand. 15 years later, almost to the day, Larissa and I made our first trip. We started in the North Island and wound our way south, plotting our route from filming location to filming location. During an amazing 3 weeks, we saw everything from the Shire to Mordor, from Rohan to Gondor. I even proposed by Kelazzarum the Mirrormere in the Dimril Dale. We've been back another 3 times since, with many trips sadly being cancelled, first by the measles epidemic that hit Auckland, and then of course the current state of the world, but almost as soon as we landed on that first trip, we knew we wanted to make the move more permanent. And now, at long last, we have finally set a date. Zorpazorp is moving to Middle-earth.
I'm going on an adventure!
Yes, the whole family, myself, my wife, 2 daughters and 2 cats will all be hopping on a plane and sailing to Valinor, albeit in the east. Now, before we go into the many challenges that will present to someone who has an entire storage unit jam-packed full of terrain, the biggest thing I really want to talk about is what this will mean for Zorpazorp in terms of content. Since this channel became a serious endeavor, I wanted to make one style of videos, and that style of content requires a pretty close proximity to Middle-earth itself. I dabbled with it back in the early days, traveling over on trips, and some of you lovely folks from the very beginning will know exactly where I'm going with this, but my absolute content creation dream is to deck out a massive camper van into a mobile workshop and build huge landscapes from Middle-earth and film battle reports in the locations the movies were filmed. Just imagine for a moment the things I've yearned so long to create. Picture me carving the hills of Edoras by eye from the landscapes right in front of me, literally sitting on the top of Mount Sunday. Or sculpting the flower beds of Bagshot Row, or slaying Sharky's ruffians at the Battle of Bywater in the real Shire farm in Matamata. Or sprinkling malon leaves and ground covers on the floor of Lothlorien in the beech forests of Paradise. Or slaying orcs by the seeing seat of Armon Hen in the thickets of Closeburn and Glenorchy and the shores of North Mavora Lakes. See me swing the mace of Sauron in the Battle of the Last Alliance upon the volcanic slopes of Whakapapa ski field in the summer. The possibilities are virtually endless. Across my trips to New Zealand, there is literally only a handful of minutes of screen time in the original trilogy that I haven't visited in person, and I cannot wait to capture it all for you guys right here on Zorpazorp on location at 28mm scale. So with all this driving force of vision behind me, and what I've teased here is just a fraction of the crazy plans inside my head, now it's time to talk logistics. How the hell are we going to do this? The first part of that question is, where are we going to move to? Middle-earth is a small country compared to Australia, but it's still pretty sizable and has a whole range of amazing places to live. So Larissa and I sat down and pored over all of our books and maps trying to find our home. The first big decision was North Island or South. So we thought back to that very first trip we took and explored the landscapes in our mind's eye. We landed in Auckland Airport, and while a nice city, apart from some epic dwarves at the terminal, it didn't scream Middle-earth, but our first contender hit us just outside the city limits on our way down to Matamata and the Shire. You can see why Peter picked this landscape to be the Shire. It's a beautiful, wholesome countryside that doesn't feel far removed from an English landscape, and the Shire itself was so stunning. But as we moved south, we fell more and more in love with everywhere we went. The lakes of Rotorua were incredible, but the first truly jaw-dropping moment came, quite appropriately, from Mount Doom. Just like Pippin did in the Fellowship when he first sees the Misty Mountains, we drove into town and crested a hill, and suddenly below us was the stunning vista of Lake Taupo, and then behind it some lofty clouds, which I suddenly realized weren't clouds at all, but were two twin mountain peaks of Mount Nahoe and Tongariro. The former was used as the peak of Mount Doom, and the slopes around Mount Ruapehu just a little further south played host to a whole bunch of locations. The Emyn Muil, heaps of Mordor, and even some Athelian locations like the stream where Gollum catches his fish, and a reference spot for Faramir's waterfall hideout, Henneth Anun.
Mordor. The one place in Middle-earth we don't want to see any closer. It's just where we can't get.
Them. We hate them. It's ours, it is, and we want it.
The landscapes were incredibly moving and stark, and I could totally see myself crafting terrain and filming against these stunning vistas. But they didn't feel like home.
Catching one of Gollum's fish.
As we continued down the North Island, we saw some amazing stops. The Rangitakai Gorge is an incredible section of the Anduin River, Kaitoki Regional National Park is Rivendell.
Mordor Clubby. Is it left or right?
And then, of course, Wellington, the home of Peter Jackson, Weta Workshop, and a whole host of filming locations in and around the city. Welly immediately jumped to the top of the list. It was just so livable. Right here on the bay, an amazing vibe, and little slices of Middle-earth absolutely everywhere. But before we knew it, we were swept off to the South Island, and let me tell you, New Zealand started bringing in the heavyweights. The location for Edoras is so damn beautiful. You guys have seen it a million times, and it's even more stunning in person. A rocky mound at the mouth of a vale by a stream surrounded by snow-capped mountains. But it's basically in the middle of nowhere on a sheep station with pretty bad internet. We'll chalk this one up as an amazing content location, but not really a great place to live.
Absolutely stunning.
As we journeyed south, the mountains got bigger, the landscapes got more breathtaking, and the filming locations got more and more and more abundant. Through the Pelennor fields, past Minas Tirith, weaving through the ford of Bruinen, and we found ourselves in Otago. This region spreads from the plains of Rohan in central Otago right across to the Queenstown Lakes district, and is truly the heart of Middle-earth. Armonhen, Lothlorien, Fangorn, Rohan, Southern Gondor, Eriador, Isengard, the Gladden Fields, the Misty Mountains, the Dimril Dale, the list goes on and on and on, and the landscapes are just incredible. If there's a mind-blowing vista in the movies, there's a good chance it was shot in this region. However, being one of the most beautiful places in the world does have its drawbacks, and the price of housing in New Zealand broadly, but especially in certain cities in Otago, is just insane. So we'll more than likely be living in some tiny rural town to actually give us a chance of affording more than a shoebox. It's also very likely that we won't be able to actually get a mortgage for some time, so we may end up renting somewhere else in New Zealand while we save our pennies and convincing our mortgage broker that being a YouTuber is in fact a real job. But we have absolutely 100% found our future home. The center of the South Island will be our Middle-earth. So, now we know where we're going, but how on earth are we going to get there? Before we dive into that logistical madness, we're finally launching our merch. Yes, check out these new threads. We've got Zorpazorp shirts, Zorpazorp sweaters, Zorpazorp hoodies, and the dark horse of the catalogue, the Grimbold Special, featuring our beloved son walking to the Pelennor, and on the back, 3 stanzas of his epic song, penned by yours truly. The merch ships from the Europe and the US, so it should be pretty close to most of you, and the links for the merch store and for the resin bases on my store, Zorpazorp.com, are down in the description. If you like the threads, definitely go check them out. They are an awesome way to support the channel. Currently, we live in Brisbane, Australia. As the wings of the Nazgul fly, it's 2,393 kilometers between the major airports over a massive ocean, so we're gonna have to hop on a plane, but I'm not exactly going to be able to to fit the ridiculous amount of terrain I've been building over the last 15 years on a 737. So that is all going to have to go on a shipping container, probably from Brisbane to Auckland, and then get loaded onto a truck all the way down the North Island, onto the ferry, and then all the way down the South Island. That is going to be insanely expensive. So for now, it's not coming. Yes, the clock is officially ticking. I have between now and when we leave to get every piece of content filmed with that terrain before it all goes into storage. This doesn't mean it's being abandoned forever. The current plan is that once we've managed to finally get a mortgage and have the space ready for storage, it's all coming over. I'll also be flying back to Australia several times a year to run huge events for the Australian Middle-earth League, and we'll be getting it all out for those occasions, including the special 50-person Minas Tirith Siege of Gondor and Arda Unleashed. I will of course be taking some things with me straight away. All of my Lord of the Rings and Heresy armies will come, as well as a few select gaming boards that are modular enough to go on air freight like the Hive City, and then as soon as I arrive, I'll be diving into making a whole range of new ones. I can finally reveal that this is the reason I've never got around to finishing my third Edoras build or that long-teased Armon Hen. So there is a lot to organize, shifting our entire lives and the entirety of Zorpazorp operations to another country. I'll need to hire staff to run the Zorpazorp online store here in Australia. I'll have to work out how to pay tax in 2 countries, how to decide what to bring and what to leave behind, and of course, finding somewhere to live from a couple of thousand kilometers away. The more we start planning, the messier it gets, but we will make it happen. And that's the final decision really, isn't it? When are we going to go, and how long do we have? Well, Larissa and I have decided that we are roughly aiming for September of 2022. That feels like a reasonable amount of time to get everything finished before we go, every half-finished project tied off, and every plan completed. But I can already feel the days just slipping away. 2021 was a massive year for Zorpazorp, but 2022 is going to have to be even bigger.